But yeah,
Okay.
it would be amiss for me not to go into this topic because a lot of my listeners are Bitcoiners, and I know that they will be interested to know your view on this. I know that you have kind of had your first touch with Bitcoin because I've heard you on some of the Bitcoin podcasts talking about that. Interested to know where you're up to with that journey, how you kind of see Bitcoin in the whole this whole tapestry of what's going on at the moment in terms of what like global economics, into like both personally and I guess on more of a geopolitical level as well.
Well, the advantage of Bitcoin is, of course, you take your money off the table. What you need to do is not have your money in a bank, not be beholden to central banks. And the thing that Bitcoin does is it takes it off the table. It takes you off grid when it comes to your money. And I'm a gold bug, but everybody has a different risk reward view. So when you get to my age as an old geezer, gold for me, I don't want the volatility. And I've been building a gold portfolio for over 20 years. So I started buying my gold at £250 an ounce. This morning it was £1,700 an ounce.
Wow.
That works out at 8.5% compounded since I started changing my portfolio from equities to gold. So that is for me, that works for me. Now, if you're young, if you're younger and you've got a much longer time horizon, you can stand the volatility. So you can stand the volatility of Bitcoin. Now, I made money out of Bitcoin, so, and I think Bitcoin is a good idea. But Bitcoin has further to go yet. And I think some of the people I speak to, and I've done podcasts with Richard Breedlove, for example, and others, extremely well informed and well-read people. Very interesting doing their podcasts with them because they really understand what they're doing. The problem sometimes with some hodlers is, they've got probably $1,000 worth of Bitcoin in Des Moines or somewhere like that, and they haven't a bloody clue what they're doing. They just can't see down the thing. And of course, we've just seen that a little bit with ETFs, Bitcoin ETFs. I understand ETFs. I've done this for 40 years. I've done this sort of stuff for a living. If you're buying a gold ETF or a Bitcoin ETF or a silver ETF, you're not getting gold, silver, or Bitcoin. You're getting a counterparty promise from BlackRock.
Mm-hmm.
But when you knock on the door and want it back, they'll give it to you. Come on, everybody. Come, grow up. They'll be fiddling the price, shorting it, doing all sorts of stuff to control the price, as they have done with gold up until relatively recently, but they haven't been able to suppress it totally, which is why it's gone up 8.5% a year. But it hasn't actually. Of course, the dollar is degraded and the pound is degraded against it every year, but to the tune of 8.5%. That's the truth of the matter. But you and I know that. Some people don't know that. But here's the key. Bitcoin must be an international medium of exchange. It's not at the moment. You should be able to pick up the phone and buy your new Mercedes with Bitcoin. You should be able to go into a store and buy whatever you want with Bitcoin. Now, you can't do that at the moment. I would love to see the day when Bitcoin became a true medium of exchange. That's what I'd like to see. And it may well get there, but I'm not sure it'll get there in my lifetime at 74, 75. So my risk analysis is different from a younger man. Certainly, I think that early Bitcoiners were very clever because they saw how the game was playing out, and good for them, as I did with gold on a more modest level of growth. But good luck to all Bitcoiners, and I hope it works out well for them. But the beauty of Bitcoin was it's yours. It's in your personal wallet. You don't want BlackRock or Vanguard or the government regulators anywhere near it. It destroys the whole concept of Bitcoin. It stops being yours. You think, oh, I've got my wallet, I've got my password. Yeah, you might have, but you'll still find as the silver market up until quite recently too has been suppressed. We're in the range of 13 years. 13 years ago, silver was $50 an ounce. It's $20 an ounce now. That thanks to JP Morgan suppressing the price and cheating on paper silver. That can happen with Bitcoin. Now, the people who really don't understand these matters, who are normally generally younger chaps who haven't worked in the city or Wall Street don't understand how that can be done. I do know how it can be done. And I also know how it can be suppressed or buggered around. So when I get my gold coins, coin of the realm, no VAT, no capital gains tax. Once I've got that in my hand, the audit trail dies after 6 years in Britain. There is no audit trail because if you buy a big lump of coins, lots and lots of coins, it goes, it's audited. There it is. It could be confiscated if the government came along and said, Godfrey Bloom, you've got 100,000 worth of the gold coins and we want them. We're confiscating gold this year. But that falls off the cliff after 6 years. And with blockchain, the thing is with blockchain, you have a very definitive audit trail. So when you want to get out, that exposes, depending on to whom you sell your Bitcoin or who buys your Bitcoin, you have a very definitive audit trail. That's a weakness. It's a weakness in gold as well, but it's a bigger weakness when you have a blockchain. It's not a deal breaker. It's not a deal breaker, but there is a feeling that people say, "Oh well, no, I just wouldn't give my password. If I don't give my password, they can't get my Bitcoin." And my answer to that is Julian Assange. They can do what they like. They can bang you up in solitary confinement if they think you've got it until they get your passcode. How long would you last in Belmarsh in solitary confinement before you gave them your password? Depends on who you are. Most people would cough it up in less than 6 months.
Just on that point about gold, why is it that the audit trail disappears after 6 years? Is that just some kind of policy that we have to trust, or is there something?
That's just in this country. If I bought £100,000 worth of gold coin, and the gold bullion dealer would have to keep that trade on their books for 6 years for inspection.
Okay.
So if they wanted to get hold of my gold, they could go into the gold and say, "We want to see everybody who's bought over £10,000 worth of," it has to be a meaningful figure, over £50,000 worth of gold coins in the last 6 years. And then they'll go round and knock on the door. This happened, believe it or not, in Paris in the 1700s with the Mississippi bubble under John Law. And we've seen that kind of things happen. Roosevelt, of course, confiscated American gold in the 1930s. It can be done, but I think one needs to be pragmatic. Yes, it can be done. How would they do it? When could they do it? Given that it's not taxable, they would have to then confiscate what is coin of the realm, your gold Britannias or your gold. So very difficult to do. Plus, of course, the fact, as Michael Caine was saying, not a lot of people know this, only about 1% of anybody's portfolio, 1% of portfolios is gold bullion. It's tiny. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. It used to be much more than that. It used to be 4 or 5%. And the Swiss franc was backed by gold. Now it's probably 15% backed by gold. So most people, who's got the gold? Who's got all the gold? The central banks. The central banks have been buying it. Now, I sniff the wind as an old geezer who's been around. If the central banks are buying it in big numbers, that's the place to be.
What do you mean by that? That's the place to be.
If they're buying gold,
okay, I see.
I buy gold.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely take your point, and I obviously, some people are quite skeptical because obviously, like the Bitcoin blockchain, it is anyone can kind of look at it, and it is, I guess, more easily auditable in that sense. But I also just think people should buy outside of regulated exchanges anyway. I mean, that would be my advice to anyone listening who is concerned about that. Is just there are ways to buy it peer-to-peer and, go through that, even if it means that you've got to pay, 3% more, 4% more, 5% more. It's worth it to have that complete anonymity so that it's absolutely not attached to name.
Anything that the government can't easily get their hands on. And Bitcoin and gold coins are one. They can't easily get their hands on it. I think that's the key. You take your money off the table, but I would say certainly, I think Bitcoin is for younger fellows who've got more time to take the volatility. That would be my only thing. But I'm not anti-Bitcoin. The trouble is too many people think that it's either or. It's Bitcoin versus gold. It isn't. They've got a lot of the same characteristics, and that's why they attract the same kind of person who doesn't trust government, deep state, and central banks. It's the same thing. The trouble is there are so many hodlers who think that somehow that if you are a gold bug, you're hostile to Bitcoin, or you're an idiot. And sometimes, occasionally, I get a little bit cross. I'm 74. I've won international prizes for fund management. I'm quite a clever little shit. I don't need somebody in Des Moines with $10,000 worth of Bitcoin telling me I don't know my business. Don't do that if you're watching, people. Don't do that. It does annoy me.
Yeah, I don't think that they are. I think that they're part of the same battle, and they have, different qualities to each of them. And like you said, I think a good way of looking at it is that, if you have a higher risk appetite, if you're younger, then, maybe you want to put more into Bitcoin. And if you don't have as high a risk appetite, then maybe you want to put more into gold. But I definitely think that they're both fighting the same battle. And, one of the things that I really love is that we can have conversations with this. I'm someone who cares a lot about Bitcoin. You're someone who cares a lot about gold, but we have a lot of these kind of shared ideas. And I think that, we are fighting that same battle. And it's good to have these kind of, I guess, more intergenerational conversations. So yeah, it's good to hear that you still have a positive view of Bitcoin, at least, although obviously, you do have some skepticism when it comes to order stability.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.